you very much for those of you who are here first time. This is, I think it's our year and a half into our Meetup. Hong and me, my partner in crime, started the LeanAgile scale level of Agile and Agile thinking. We both part-time adjunct instructor here at UCSC Extension. Thanks to UCSC Extension for providing us through. We've been getting together for the past year and a half or so. They just started a program called LeanAgile Project Management, a kind of mini certificate. They have professional project and program management certification that I'm teaching and Hong is teaching few courses. We've been going around about a year and a half, Dean and the department, trying to find out what is that our area needs in terms of project and program management and how to tie that to agility. That's how we have been trying to learn, stop the failure of project and program management as we know from waterfallish areas, even though waterfall provides good start point for any structured project and program management. Agile has proven that can take it to many next levels. And that's how UCSC Extension started. We've had a few of our leaders talking at our meetup. And this time we had Larry here, and Larry had over 20 years of experience in software development, management, and anything in between. Past 10 years he's been diving into Agile and lean processes when it comes to developing software and training teams how to work collaboratively and create value to organizations. Oh gosh, can't say enough about leaders like Larry. They've been doing so many different things that I cannot explain or even touch, scratch the surface in half an hour. So I let him to continue.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity. As David said, I've been doing this work for quite a bit of time. Just yesterday, I took a job as a full-time Agile coach at Splunk. I am the first full-time Agile coach at Splunk, and it's quite an honor. Also, some of you may know, I run a nonprofit called the Job Hackers. We provide Agile and Scrum training for free to people who are in transition, people who are looking for work, and try to help place them in positions. I've been doing that now for over 2 years as a 501c3 registered nonprofit organization. I was doing it for about a year and a half before we even registered it. I just was doing it sporadically. We do 4 classes a year now, and I'll talk a little bit about Job Hackers and what we do as well. I have 2 books. I always tell my classes that if you want to be a consultant and make money, you have to have books. I stopped at 2 because 3 is still just books. I have enough material. The second one didn't sell anyway. It doesn't really matter. You just have to have them. Anyway, I wrote a blog many years ago that I think that there should be a position called Chief Agile Officer. I'm still hoping that maybe Splunk will do that in the future for me. I got tired of waiting, so I created my own nonprofit organization, and I call myself Chief Agile Officer. So that's what you see right there at the Job Hackers. But tonight I'm going to talk about cognitive illusions, because here's the interesting thing. I think probably a lot of you will know this. You start working in Agile and Scrum, you start working with teams, and then you start running into all the problems that it takes to actually transform organizations. It's pretty easy to work with 2 or 3 development teams. That's why these days the big buzzword is all around scaling Agile, and there's SAFe, and there's LESS, there's Nexus, and there's a whole bunch of other scaling frameworks, because one of the difficult things is actually taking an organization and getting that organization to be Agile, and starting to look at things at a system level and understanding why things don't happen the way we expect them to. As my mother used to always tell me, God laughs at man's plans. And we have these great plans on how we're going to change the world and we're going to transform organizations, but it's very difficult to do. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out why. This presentation on cognitive illusions, a lot of this is, if you think about it and put it in context, why do so many organizational transformations, not just Agile transformations, but organizational transformations in general fail? And the theme behind it is basically our mind does not work the way we think it does. And it works in some bizarre and funny and different ways. Hence the term cognitive illusions. We're all familiar with optical illusions. I've always been fascinated by optical illusions, and if you look up here at the board, I'm assuming that as you look at this head on, at least it looks like these discs are moving. And the problem is that we cannot not see them moving. I mean, you could tell me that you can't see them move, but everyone does, right? As long as you're looking at it at the right angle. This is an optical illusion. And there's some other famous optical illusions. Over here, these two orange circles, even though they look and appear different to us, to our brains, they are both the same size. The shading in here is the same. These tables, believe it or not, if I were to take this and move it over here, is the exact same size. There's not really a cube in here. Is this guy looking to the side or right in front of you? And perhaps the most famous optical illusion of all, A and B, are the same length. We can't see these things, or we don't perceive these things the way they are. Sometimes it's kind of like a parlor trick, but it's more than that. Because vision is our best system. If you look at your brain and you look at the neurons and you look at the amount of area that our brains have for visual processing, that's our best sense. That's what we use the most. And if vision's our best system, and we make mistakes in vision, these small little mistakes on the size of things and the color of things, then what chance do we have in other domains that are much more complex? Things such as decision-making and economic reason. This is a quote from Dan Ariely. If you're familiar with Dan Ariely, he is a behavioral economist from Duke University. And he asks a very pertinent question. If our brains are so easily fooled in our best sense, what happens when we run into things that are complex? And the interesting thing is Agile and Scrum were used for years and years with software development, which is knowledge work, and knowledge work is complex. So if we're not good at the simple things, how do we expect that we're going to make good decisions and rational decisions when it comes to complex things? And the answer is, we probably not. Because we don't see the world the way we think we do. We do not perceive the world we see the world that we perceive. Or accurately, the world that our brains allow us to see. These illusions that we saw at the beginning, these optical illusions, they're not a big problem for us on an evolutionary scale. Our brains did not evolve to tell those subtle differences, and it doesn't really matter. Because what matters is really the context. These things here we're showing are out of context, but we only see what our brains will allow us to see. And that's a problem, because we don't always see what's there. We don't always see reality, what I would call objective reality. I can tell you a couple stories. Breaking news, tens of thousands of fraudulent votes found in an Ohio warehouse. On September 30th of 2016, in the Christian Times newspaper, this guy, Randall Pierce, he found all these ballot boxes somewhere in a Columbus, Ohio warehouse. There's only one problem with that. It's not true. This is not Randall Pierce, or whoever he claims to be. This was clickbait. This was written by somebody who made $600 because 1 million people clicked into it. Why did 1 million people click into it? Confirmation bias. It told them the story that they wanted to hear, not the truth. And we saw a lot of this. We see a lot of this, and I'll talk about politics. We see what we want to see. Not only do we see what we want to see, we only look for those things that confirm our existing thought. That's the way our brains are wired. We don't do things scientifically. In science, we have what's called a null hypothesis. It means I have to try to prove that this isn't the thing that is causing something. Then I can say that the preponderance of evidence suggests that this thing is true. That's not the way we work. Our brains aren't scientific. How many people are familiar with a guy named Simon Sinek? Probably a few of you, right? He has that Starts With Why, which is a beautiful, beautiful YouTube video. If you haven't seen it, you're one of the few people in the world, I think, who has it. He also has another one where he talks about how our brains work neurologically. We are pattern-seeking beings. Our brains seek patterns. And when we see patterns and we recognize patterns, what happens? We get a shot of dopamine. And that's what this confirmation bias is. We're dopamine junkies. Because every time we're right, we get that shot of dopamine. And dopamine is the same thing that we have in cigarette addiction, alcohol addiction, and other addictions. It is not the best neurochemical we could use. The one that you really want is oxytocin. Oxytocin is called the love chemical. That's the one where we help other people, not where we try to prove that we're right. That's dopamine. Dopamine can be very, very dangerous. I work with a lot of people in my nonprofit who are looking for work, so there's a lot of biases and illusions and things where we trick ourselves in job interviews. I'll give you an example of one. It's called gambler's fallacy. If I go to Vegas, and I go to the roulette wheel. You're familiar with the roulette wheel? It's red, black, and there's a little green in there just to mess you up. Comes up red 3 or 4 times in a row. I expect that it's going to come up green. Odds don't care. If I flip a coin, I get 5 heads in a row. There is not a better chance that I'm going to get tails. There is the same chance. It's 50-50 for each thing. There is no memory to odds and statistics and probability, except for that's how our brain wants it to be. One of the things that happens is we play this game of gambler's fallacy with a bunch of different things in life. One of them is in a job interview, if the three people and candidates who were before you, the three candidates in front of you, they were poor, they're going to rate you higher right out of the gate. In fact, they're going to rate you higher by equivalent of 2 years of job experience to break the streak of weak candidates. Fighting jobs is full of all kinds of biases, and that's one of them. This gambler's fallacy also holds true for things like judicial rulings. You go to court, your innocence or guilt is going to be influenced by the innocence or guilt of the people in front of you. So if three people in front of you are guilty, your odds of being innocent, regardless of the objective truth, is going to be higher, and vice versa. You don't have a whole lot of influence on your schedule, but you can probably figure that one out while you're sitting there waiting for your trial, right? The other thing, loan applications. If there's three people with weak credit in front of you, the chances of you getting the loan go up, regardless of credit that you have. And it happens in all kinds of strange places. It also happens in baseball, balls and strikes. And this is stuff that can be proven mathematically. The other thing in job interviews is what I would call overconfidence effect. The purpose of a job interview is to determine how well you will perform on the job, right? Most unstructured job interviews have a very, very low, what they call R correlation, which basically tells me if I think somebody's going to be good on the job, and then I measure their performance later to see if they were actually good on the job, there is a very little correlation between what I thought at the job interview, in an unstructured job interview, and the actual job performance. But everybody thinks they're good at it. I had a boss recently tell me, I am really, really good at job interviews. I can always figure things out in a job interview. It doesn't work that way. This is the only time I ever got in what they call a flame war on the internet. There was a guy who worked for a big company, I won't mention the name, but he said, yeah, I've got the perfect job interviewing techniques. I get them up on the whiteboard and I do these coding tests and blah, blah, blah. I said, you might want to back up. You might not be as good as you think you are, and he took a little offense to that, and it went back and forth for a while. But where he worked was desirable. He got the best candidates anyway. So the odds of him picking a good one are probably a lot higher. He was very confident that he was able to do it. I said, look, take your technique, go down to the DMV, see how it works for you. See if it really works. Not at a place people want to actually go, because you get the cream of the crop. Other things, job interviews, interesting stuff. When people used to audition for symphony orchestras, they used to have to turn around and face the back of the auditorium. Why did they do that?
Reduce bias?
To reduce bias, because they were not hiring women. And they started looking at it and turned around and face the back. Didn't work. They eventually had to install carpeting all the way until you get to your chair or whatever it is. Why would they install carpeting?
High heels.
High heels. Because I can hear it. So these are the things that happen to us as human beings. It's not that we're bad people. We're not. We're human. This is what makes us human, myself included, is we are susceptible to all of these errors. And it's not just a few. It's a lot.